Good afternoon and welcome to the Arizona Lodging and Tourism Association's annual Industry Forecast Forum, an important analysis on the current state of the industry and what to expect in 2021. I'm Kim Sabo, President and CEO of the Arizona Lodging and Tourism Association, and I welcome you from the beautiful Sanctuary Camelback Mountain Resort in Paradise Valley. I'd like to thank AZLTA board member Bill Nasikas and the team at West Rock Hospitality, as well as Sanctuary General Manager Michael Sergine, for providing this breathtaking backdrop today. And last but not least, thanks to each of you for joining us for what is certain to be a very informative update from our national industry partners, advocating day in and day out on Capitol Hill, U.S. travel. We'll also get an in-depth overview of our industry, including a focus on Phoenix and Scottsdale from key strategic partner STR. AZLTA and our members work vigorously to serve, support, and advocate on behalf of our industry. And today's programming wouldn't be possible without our generous sponsor, Experience Scottsdale. Thank you to AZLTA board member and president and CEO of Experience Scottsdale, Rachel Sacco, and her amazing team for their long-standing leadership and commitment to our state's travel and tourism industry. We're so grateful for your support. And we certainly couldn't do this without the support of our entire board of directors. I'd like to recognize AZLTA board chairman Brent Durad, president and CEO of Visit Tucson, for his incredible leadership this year in particular, as we've navigated the most unprecedented and challenging of times. 2020 has not been the year any of us expected. In the midst of our busiest travel and tourism season, the COVID-19 pandemic brought our industry to a dramatic halt overnight. Hotel occupancy percentages, normally in the high 80s in mid-March, plummeted to single digits immediately. Employees were laid off or furloughed. Businesses struggled to keep the lights on and keep the doors open. But with any challenge comes an opportunity for community building and collaboration. I'm so incredibly proud of this resilient industry and how we've come together to provide help for those in need, develop standards and protocols to ensure the safety and well-being of guests and employees, and advocate for much-needed relief at the state and federal levels. 2019 was a record-breaking year for Arizona's tourism industry. Our great state hosted 46.8 million overnight visitors, up nearly 3% from the previous year. This record number of visitors accounted for a 4.7% increase in visitor spending, bringing that number up to $25.6 billion for the year. And tourism accounted for $3.78 billion in combined local, state, and federal tax revenues. These record numbers have made the 2020 economic impact on our industry even more devastating. To date, we in Arizona have already lost more than $7 billion in visitor spending. But as the case numbers decline and public health guidelines begin to ease, this resilient industry is leading with solutions. We're leading the way by working to rebuild consumer confidence through the implementation and promotion of elevated health and safety protocols. In mid-May, AZLTA launched the AZ Safe and Clean Certification Initiative, an effort to rebuild and restore vital consumer confidence and awareness about the safety and cleanliness of our businesses in response to COVID-19. As our hotels and resorts gradually reopen amenities and promote staycations this fall, we want our travelers and guests to know our properties have taken swift action to ensure a safe and clean stay. The AZ Safe and Clean certification was created in partnership with the American Hotel and Lodging Association's Safe Stay Initiative, which builds upon various sanitation best practices and recommendations from national hospitality and public health experts. This program is an innovative way for our industry to show guests and prospective travelers the hard work being done to keep these properties clean and safe for our guests and for our employees, the backbone of our industry. We want our guests to have peace of mind that our properties are going above and beyond to provide a relaxing, safe, and high-quality experience. Tourism is the lifeblood of our state's economy, and we must ensure we're doing everything we can from a local, state, and national perspective to help this industry recover and recover stronger than ever. We're only a few months away from a new legislative session at the Arizona State Capitol, and our advocacy team continues to work diligently to educate lawmakers on the vital importance of tourism promotion, not only to recapture Arizona's market share, but grow our market share of visitors from around the world. The return on investment is undeniable. According to Rounds Consulting Group, for every $10 million invested in tourism promotion, $100 million is returned in the form of tax revenue. We will continue to work closely with the Arizona Office of Tourism to ensure the state invests in promoting Arizona as a premier travel destination. We will also continue to advocate for the establishment of tourism marketing authorities, a tool that will serve as a critical promotional lifeline to our local communities throughout the state. As you know, there's a lot going on in our nation's capital, and our team is working closely with our partners at U.S. Travel and the American Hotel and Lodging Association to urge Congress to pass legislation critical to our industry's recovery. Our national partners have been working day and night to fight for our industry on Capitol Hill and keep us apprised of the latest news, and we're incredibly grateful for their leadership. To provide an update from Washington, D.C., we're pleased to have with us today Tori Emerson Barnes, Executive Vice President of Public Affairs and Policy at the U.S. Travel Association. Tori leads the government relations, policy development, communications, marketing, and research teams at U.S. Travel. She was appointed to this role in March of 2019 after serving as the association's Senior Vice President of Government Relations. She most recently served as Executive Director of Federal Affairs and managed a diverse portfolio that included tax, trade, fuel economy, transportation, pension issues, and political operations. Without further ado, please join me in welcoming Tori Barnes.
Hi, y'all. I wish we could be together in person, and I'm very much looking forward to when we can be face-to-face again. I'm grateful for the opportunity to be a part of this event and to have a chance to share an update on everything U.S. Travel is doing to help our industry right now. These past several months have been incredibly challenging, likely the most challenging times that we have ever faced. Each state has had to navigate their own unique circumstances. I know Arizona was in the height of your tourism season when this all began, and that there continue to be hurdles to overcome as we head towards recovery. Since the onset of the pandemic, U.S. Travel has pivoted our focus to securing the relief and protection the industry so desperately needs, while considering what stimulus proposals and ultimately recovery-focused efforts can do to bring the industry back more quickly. We are educating lawmakers every day on the devastating impact the pandemic has had on travel businesses and employees. After reaching a low of 51% in May, twice the unemployment rate during the worst year of the Great Depression, unemployment in the leisure and hospitality sector remained at 34% in August. Losses in spending are projected to reach $505 billion by the end of this year and $1 trillion by the end of 2023. U.S. Travel's president and CEO Roger Dow, as well as CEOs across the travel industry, have held several meetings with the Trump administration since March, including with the president himself, Vice President Pence, Secretary of Treasury Mnuchin, and dozens of members of Congress, making sure our industry and the overwhelming impact the coronavirus has had is at the forefront of conversations when it comes to the rebuilding of our economy and the recovery of American jobs. While the data carries significant weight, it is your stories that show the reality behind the numbers. The strength of our message is more powerful when our entire industry is carrying it forward. Through industry-wide grassroots activation, sending action alerts, posting on social media, and when lawmakers hear directly from you, it really matters. This is made very clear during the first ever virtual Hill Week this summer, and we're so grateful for the involvement of many across Arizona during that important week.
It's our first virtual Capitol Hill Week. Obviously, all of these things are done much better face-to-face in person, but we're using every means possible to get our story across.
The PPP program, it's been so beneficial for so many businesses, but the 501c6s and 4s, they were left out. So assuming there's another package that comes forward maybe in July, the people you see on this call today they would greatly appreciate it if those entities could be involved.
The traveler has not only sort of that permission to travel, to book travel, but that added incentive, such as a $4,000 travel tax credit, that really we need to give real dollars that will help to stimulate that kind of travel growth. Through our collective efforts since March, we have secured a great deal of relief for the industry to help our businesses and our workers. The CARES Act, passed in March, provided key funding for much of the industry at the height of the pandemic. And U.S. Travel has been working since then to improve and build upon provisions in the CARES Act and make sure every part of the travel industry can access the relief that you need. Right now, we are urgently calling on Congress and the administration to reach an agreement on additional relief, protection, and stimulus, but negotiations remain stalled. What is clear, very, very clear, is that small travel businesses and destination marketing organizations desperately need help, and Congress can provide this by extending the Paycheck Protection Program, expanding eligibility to DMOs of all statuses and sizes, and allowing a second draw loan on PPP. This is the minimum that we need. And we are still strongly pushing for a larger package that includes legislation meaningful for the broader travel industry, including providing grants from the Economic Development Administration to promote safe and healthy domestic travel, expanding the recovery sector loan program for longer assistance, expanding the employee retention tax credit, securing testing and contact tracing improvements. Senator Sinema is a co-sponsor of the TEST Act and has truly championed this important legislation. Frequent and easily accessibility to testing is absolutely a must. We are also asking for $13 billion in additional emergency assistance for U.S. airports. Right now, Congress has a lot of competing priorities, but in order for America's economy to recover, for Americans to be rehired, the travel industry has to be at the top of this list. Trust that we will continue to fight, and we appreciate your ongoing involvement and support when we come to you to sign letters, send messages, and to contact your members of Congress. Because it's clear, we are stronger together. We saw our collective efforts pay off this summer with the passage of the Great American Outdoors Act in July, a true show of bipartisanship, also championed by Senator Sinema. The significant achievement addresses an issue that we have been fighting for alongside many of you, protecting our national parks and public lands.
I remember a lifetime ago when we started this journey. We were inspired by each other to create something greater than ourselves, a place to feel alive and ensure what always was will always be. When he saved a nation and they saved the world. When we were divided and we were united. We aimed higher and never stopped looking up. But along the way, my roads grew old. My bridges shouldered years of weight. My trails became well-traveled. I was there for them, and I'll be there for you. Will you be there for me?
Arizona is no stranger to the strain on our national parks caused by poor funding, and this bill will help all of our nation's parks by providing funds to address the deferred maintenance backlog, ensuring that every national park is better prepared to welcome travelers both now and into the future. This comes at a pivotal time. Americans right now are more comfortable being outside, and our parks offer that and so much more. I, for one, would love to be at the Grand Canyon right now. There are signs that we are headed in the right direction, towards recovery. Excitement to travel, openness to travel information, and importantly, perception of how safe it is to get out there right now has improved over the last month, and we're seeing that reflected in travel behavior. Providing travelers assurances that they can be safe while traveling is the first step towards getting Americans moving again. And our industry has done an incredible job putting enhanced cleanliness measures in place across every business in every sector. Arizona has been especially terrific at carrying out these practices and bringing them forward, providing a certification to hotels that fulfill certain cleaning requirements, among other smart protocols. But a safe and healthy travel experience requires that we all do our part, and that includes wearing a mask, practicing safe distancing, and washing hands regularly. Messages that we also must drive home to our visitors and even residents. This must be a shared responsibility. While we must continue to keep a close eye on what's happening with the coronavirus around the country, we are seeing that Americans are becoming more open to the ideas of making plans, thinking ahead, and eventually traveling. And now that we have an opportunity to inspire travelers and give them the feeling of anticipation again by booking a trip to take in the future when they're ready. An industry-wide campaign was launched on September 8th, designed by the Let's Go There Coalition, and it's aiming to empower Americans to imagine the joy of travel again.
Someone once said, life is what happens when you're busy making plans. But the truth is, in a life without plans, nothing really happens. So let's go there. Let's make some plans. Let's feel that feeling once again. The rush of excitement as you search and imagine that perfect getaway. Trip. Vacation. Let's go there. Somewhere. Anywhere. Let's save a date, book a flight, and get to the destination that will feel like no other. Because when the time is right, when the heart says go, we'll be ready. So let's book a trip. Let's aim for the horizon and shoot for the moon. Let's go there.
I hope that many of you are already involved, and if you're not, it's very easy to be. There are materials and ideas available in a toolkit accessible on our website. Now more than ever, we need the chorus of all of our voices, reminding everyone that travel is necessary for our overall well-being. More than anything, travel brings happiness and enriches our lives. We must return to the excitement and anticipation of travel to revive the economy. Before I close, I would like to take a moment to recognize the resiliency of Arizona and the leadership of Kim Sabo. The collaboration that you have shown with each other, your communities, and your local leaders. It truly embodies the spirit of travel and the strength of our industry. Thank you for all you do. We will get through this.
And thank you, Tori, so much for those kind words, the tireless work that you do at U.S. Travel, the entire team led by Roger Dow. We greatly respect and appreciate the work you're doing day in and day out on Capitol Hill on behalf of this industry. We know that we are in the most unprecedented and challenging of times, and without the critical work you do on Capitol Hill on behalf of this industry, we would not be where we are today. So thank you for that. And again, thank you for the beautiful presentation. At this time, I would like to welcome another key industry partner, STR. STR is a premium data benchmarking, analytics, and marketing insight firm. And with us here today to give us a snapshot of where we are right now in 2020 and also provide a forecast of what we might see going into 2021 is Senior Business Development Executive Chase Acer. Chase, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it, and know that you are doing 3 of these webinars today covering regions of Arizona, which is so incredibly helpful and invaluable because as we see, different regions of the state have indeed been impacted differently. So thank you for your time and presentation today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kim, and thank you to everyone at the Arizona Lodging and Tourism Association for having me today. I can remember last year being able to travel around throughout the beautiful state, and this year I haven't been able to come to Arizona at all, so I look forward to being back in front of everyone very, very soon. So thank you all for joining. Let's get started. I'm going to share my screen, and we will okay. So again, thank you all for being here. I do very much appreciate it. For those of you who do not know STR or have heard of STR but don't know exactly where the data is sourced and so on and so forth, what we do is we collect from the performance data side, which is what we'll cover first today, is data directly from hotel owners and operators, like most of you on the call today, from property management systems. That data is then collected and then sent out either by day, week, or month. We've been doing that for over 35 years across the globe, over 180 countries as of today, which equates to over 68,000 hotels and over 9 million rooms. So a lot of data, accurate data, source data, and we want to take this time, and I want to take this time to thank you all for continuing to be a partner with STR. Being that partner with STR, we do have a COVID-19 landing page, so I encourage you all to visit when you can. And I want to take this time to say that this presentation will be made available to everyone in attendance today. So this information will be here and the information being shared. So if you want to take notes, great, but just know this will be made available. As for an agenda, so we stay on track, meaning me, we'll cover the US. We'll look at the Phoenix market and the submarkets. Take a look at the pipeline from a US standpoint and from a market standpoint. Then we'll look at forecast, same format, US as well as the market. And then if there's time available at the end, we'll have some Q&A. So fresh off the press is the August data. There's some highlights here. When I say highlights, I mean, we have to look for some positivities here. We know this is source data. It's good data. We're not hiding from the truth. But when we look at the RevPAR, it's down 47% year over year. However, it's less bad. And I'll say that a few more times, so I apologize if that makes you all cringe, but it's less bad results than what we have been accustomed to over the last 6 or 7 months, meaning that July was down 52%. So again, already we're seeing less bad results. Same as for ADR, it stood at a decline of 22.8%, but again, a little bit better than July. And I think one of the other highlights here is the group RevPAR. We know group demand is pretty much non-existent, as we can see here, down almost 73%. In July, that was almost 81%. But we did, as an industry, sell over 1 million group nights in the month of August. So far cry from the almost 7 million before the pandemic, but again, slow climb back. So good to see. And then lastly, the August room demand up almost 5 million from July. As we look at some absolute numbers here, again, August 2020, we saw the percentage changes a minute ago, but as we look at the occupancy, still, even with the leisure demand, we still had half the rooms that were empty in the month of August. The ADR, again, pretty close to July, but the RevPAR slightly better at $50 compared to July where it was $48. And then as we look at year to date, so we add in July and February, which we would all love to go back to, but then we have to then add in March, April, May, and so on. So this does cause an effect to the data, as you all are aware. You can see here just by looking at occupancy from year over year compared to last year, 44%, ADR 107, RevPAR 48. So again, much different than what we're used to. RevPAR almost down 50% at 46, 47% there. So again, looking at year to date, August is important to see. And again, we're looking to go upward and put this all behind us. So what we have here again is we look at, you can remember a time when we thought a monthly drop in ADR of 20% was unheard of. And it was terrible, it was severe. But the silver lining is that when we look back, we will never ever again be truly shocked by poor performance, as we see here. You know, the prior downturn, 2001, we were 111 out of 112 months of positive RevPAR growth. Most recently, as in last year, standing on stage in Phoenix, I was saying, 115 months out of 119 months of, you know, roughly of positive RevPAR growth. And that all came to a halt, as we all know. And we had another record, which was a 80% drop in RevPAR growth. We've slowly started to come back, and August again is up compared to where we were, but still the fourth lowest RevPAR recorded since STR has been an industry partner. This is a continuation of the last slide, but it just shows you here where March, you know, obviously we were at almost 52% decline, April being the all-time record on record of RevPAR growth, decline rather, of 80%. And then we've seen a 10% increase each month since April, but we did see that sort of halt a little from July to August, where we saw only, down 47 compared to, you know, before where it was 71, 60, 51. So hopefully, you know, improvements have slowed. Will likely slow a little bit further now that Labor Day's behind us, but we certainly hope there are some more positive news as we go forward. And as we talk about ADR continues to get slightly better each month. In August, again, like we looked before, it stood at down 22%. Again, just like RevPAR, it's very possible that the August data is the beginning of a trend that shows smaller improvements. Hopefully not step backs, but just a little bit of a slow growth back to where we were even in January. So again, interesting to see as we know where now April was the bottom, and as the hotel industry fights extremely hard to move back. And on that note, we get to see here the first quarter results of RevPAR percent change. Obviously, we see it almost down 20%. That still had January and February, but you can still see compared to 2018 and 2019 what a big drop that was. And then as you move into Q2, which was a really, you know, a full quarter of just really, really bad results and news, and we all know there's no reason to rehash it, but we can see, you know, was that the bottom? For the first time in STR history, were we able to really see sort of the bottom and how we can fight back up? So again, we will see what the Q3 and Q4 turns out, and as we move into 2021, we will share some more positive news as we go about this presentation. As we move into the class review, we can see here that the results of last month really haven't changed as much. The lower end hotels sold half of the rooms, and the upper upscale were 2/3 empty. And we continue to see this month over month. But again, as you compare to last year, it's just we see economy and mid-scale, and even now upper mid-scale starting to fight back. But we know economy and mid-scale continue to fare somewhat well during the bottom of, you know, the market in April, May, as we started to climb back up. But that we were really surprised that even during the lowest, that 1 million room nights were still sold So interesting. As we move to the ADR, we can see here that there's a story to tell here, but we can see how, each class has continued to move down, obviously, with the ADR. And we see all three classes below $100, roughly, upper mid-scale right at 101. But last year, the only class that was below 100 was economy, and we see that change. We also have seen where the mid-scale and economy have, and even upper mid-scale, have really kind of lowered the rate even more to drive occupancy, where we've seen the upper end kind of hold on occupancy, hold on rate rather, but it certainly has affected occupancy, as well as the upper end certainly has been closed, as we said earlier. And then moving to the RevPAR results, again, story remains the same, where the upper upscale hotels are down 65% and the economy hotels are down 27%. So just different story on each end of the spectrum here. But we saw the occupancy, we saw the ADR, and as we move to RevPAR, sort of, again, tells that story of what's taking place, even from a class perspective. So as we move into the Phoenix market, I started off with the state of Arizona, month August 2020. And again, a lot like the US, where we see occupancy below 50%. Last year at this time, occupancy as a state was almost at 65%. And the same story, you look at ADR, which isn't down as much as certainly occupancy, but that occupancy is really taking a hit and driving RevPAR down to 33%, which last year, the state was at $56 on RevPAR, this year at $42. And as we move to the market in Phoenix, you can see here the same story. The US, the state of Arizona, and now the market of Phoenix. The same story. We see occupancy below 50%. Last year at this time, 63%. So that's a 31% drop in occupancy, right around that 7%, almost 8% with ADR decline from last year. This year at $82. And again, with that occupancy at down 31%, and ADR not helping at all, which would be really difficult. We know that, but we see RevPAR down, almost 37% at $36 compared to last year. Again, was around 56. So again, you've seen Arizona, you've seen the state, seen Phoenix, the market. And so as we move now into how this compares to the other markets that we've even discussed or will discuss today, you can see here where Arizona, Phoenix, Tucson on the top row there, pretty much in line occupancy wise. But then we see Northern Arizona at 18%, still down, but quite a bit of difference there. Different story from an occupancy perspective. Where then we go to ADR and we see a huge difference in the ADR. Now again, all declines as we can see here, but Phoenix, Tucson sort of right in line, Arizona not far behind, but then we see Northern Arizona, the market, what a change from sort of the lowest decline in occupancy among the group, but the largest decline in ADR. So it's interesting to see how these markets play off of one another, even within the state. As we move to the class, I'll say it again, really in line with the US, where we see the economy mid-scale. I mean, look, even here, economy is almost 67% occupancy, which is really, really great. And we've seen throughout this pandemic, and I'm sure you've lived it and seen it, that the economy, the mid-scale properties have fared somewhat well as from an occupancy perspective during this pandemic, where we know sort of the luxury and the upper upscale, the properties in the core of the CBDs or close to the convention centers or airports have really seen the biggest decline. So compared to the US, really the luxury and upper upscale are really right in line with the US at 37% occupancy. But then on the other end, we see economy 66, almost 67%, which, sort of leads the way as it relates to the US. But again, it's interesting to see here how Phoenix, the market, is really right in line with the U.S. as a whole. And that continues to be the story really across the entire country. Now, what does that say about ADR? It's really, again, a tale of two stories. We see the luxury. Now, we know that there are luxury properties that are still closed, but we see the rate at almost $340. And we see on the far end where economy's at $69, mid-scale's at $87. And what's interesting is when we look at this compared to last year, the luxury and upper upscale actually grew ADR. And as a matter of fact, upscale class here in the middle actually, for all intents and purposes, grew as well. So the upper end grew the ADR. As we see on the other end, obviously the rate was sacrificed a little bit to drive occupancy. Certainly understanding that you want to continue to keep your doors, drive occupancy, bring people in, but you can see what a difference 1 year makes in a pandemic when you see economy at $69 versus $105 last year, and we see mid-scale at 87 versus 93 last year. Now this slide is looking at occupancy percent change and the ADR percent change. This is year to date for the market in Phoenix. And what I find is interesting here is, you can see again on the right side of the screen where the economy, was down, still almost 10% occupancy, but their ADR was also down 4%. Mid-scale ADR almost down 7%, almost 20% with occupancy. But if you go to the far left, you see here again, yes, luxury, upper upscale, almost 50% year over year change, but it continued to grow ADR. So data is very interesting. It's interesting to me that ADR continued to be, there can be growth in ADR. So was interested to share this with the group and also kind of compare that to the occupancy and see how the upper end has continued to hold their rates, and in some cases, like we're looking at today, grow. And as we look at the RevPAR year to date, obviously the upper up class, luxury class, again, in the 40s with year over year, year to date percent change rather. Last year at this time, from an absolute number, we're looking at $209 for the luxury class last year compared to this year at $124. And again, this is year to date, not just for the month. And the story continues on as we look at upper up. So last year's 130, this year's at 76. So a big, big jump. So again, even though you had some increases in ADR throughout, January through August, that the closures, obviously, we understand, but then the really significant decline in occupancies really take a toll on RevPAR. So this is weekly room demand. And it's not available on the screen, but sort of pre-pandemic, weekly demand for the week of March 7th. And this is some good news. I was happy to share this. I'm always looking for some positive notes here. March 7th, the week of March 7th, weekly demand was 389,000. We saw that drop. We know why. To, obviously the week of March 21st, 154. Then we, know the bottom consistently across the industry was April 11th, where here in the Phoenix market was at 94,000. But as you can see, started to climb back up. June 27th, 212. It kind of dipped back down a little bit, came back up. But for the week of September 19th, and I can't tell you how much I've wanted to tell you this because I'm looking for positive notes, that this was the highest weekly room demand recorded since the pandemic reared its ugly head in the hotel industry and across the globe. So really exciting, hoping that continues to move forward. I know hotels are being extremely, been extremely focused, but creative with work from home, but work from the hotel and continuing to capture those leisure markets. And we all know how beautiful the state of Arizona is in the Phoenix market. So we're so excited to share this and hope that continues forward. So the next screen that we're going to look at, or the next slide after this, is going to break down the performance and the percent change across the markets or the sub-markets within the market of Arizona. So again, you'll have this deck for your viewing pleasure, but when you do, that'll sort of break down sort of where these submarkets lay. But I wanted to show you this, and again, this is a lot of data, but it just goes to show how different the performance can be throughout the submarkets within a market. And that can be based on proximity, class makeup of hotels, so many things that sort of play into that factor. And I've highlighted, because we know there's a lot of data here, but the leader and the laggard of each group. And for instance, Phoenix West achieving a 61% occupancy for the month of August, which is great. And you can see the differences, you know, Scottsdale 30%. But then the story continues to go on, and we see that Phoenix West, you know, obviously had, you know, a really good occupancy. They had the lowest decline in occupancy, with Scottsdale having the most. But then we look at ADR, we see that Scottsdale had the highest ADR, and in fact, as you move to the right, grew ADR. So very interesting. Now, Black Canyon obviously led the charge there on the ADR growth with almost 6.7%. But again, interesting to see, and again, it sort of plays into the story of Phoenix Central, the airport, you know, sort of carrying the largest, even the Phoenix Southwest Chandler, you know, carrying the largest declines in ADR, as well as, you know, really close on the occupancy change as well. But then we move over to RevPAR, and we can see here that obviously none of these numbers are great, but even with Scottsdale increasing ADR, because the occupancy was really, you know, down 51%, we see that the percent change on the RevPAR was down almost 50% as well. So time to view this, but wanted to provide to see of what sort of makes up the submarkets that make up the Phoenix market as a whole. Now, as we move into the pipeline, we will start with the U.S., and we can see here that the in-construction rooms, 5% change from positive growth from this time last year, which probably not great news, but again, in some cases, we see positives here that the industry is continuing to grow and construction continues to happen, and we see that shovels are in the ground. As we move down, we do see the planning that there has been a percent change there, negative growth, 12% year over year. That's going to happen, and we'll touch on that here in a moment. So as we move forward, we can say that April, as you might have seen on the first, previous slide, was what we consider now as the peak, 220,000 rooms that were in construction. We saw that number drop a little bit, but it's come back up. Still not to where April was, but in August at 217,000 rooms in construction. And of those rooms, 72, again, this is the total US, 72% of those rooms in construction are made up of the economy to upscale, but as we can see, upscale, upper mid-scale sort of really leading the way there at almost respectively 65 and 68% of the 72 across the board. And I mentioned before about the percent change in the planning. As we would all expect, is that during any sort of downturn, and especially one like this that we've never had before, of course, the ones before we've never had before, but this one was certainly, this one still is something that I don't believe any of us have ever experienced. We can see how projects are moving. You know, on the left screen we see, or the left box, we see projects move to deferred. We can see here that, you know, in March, we saw 9 of those projects move. We saw the numbers sort of come down a little bit, but then jump back up in June. But then we see in August that, you know, 20 projects that were in final planning, so right before the construction phase, moved to deferred. And the planning, obviously, we see the 21 in March, which obviously we understand we needed to pump the brakes. We see that now in August, 13 of those projects that were in planning went to deferred. So not as much of a sticker shock, if you will, as the final planning with 20. And as we move to the right with projects that have been moved to abandon, again, in the final planning phase, 6 have moved to abandon from final planning. Again, interesting to see that one stage before construction being abandoned. And then obviously we see on the planning side hitting its peak here at 19 projects that were in the planning phase that have moved to abandon. So what makes up the projects that are in construction? Well, 84% of the new construction projects are the big six. So IHG, Choice, you see the list here, but quite a difference from even, 10 years ago when we could say that, obviously 59% were more of the big six and 46 were the others. So we can safely say there's been a big shift on the construction projects that are currently shovels in the ground. I wanted to include this as Phoenix is certainly part of the top 25, top 26 markets. This just shows that large markets are continuing to grow rapidly. Just the top two here, we see, Nashville, which is where I'm at, still cranes in the air. We can see 5,800 rooms in construction, which equates to 12% of existing supply, just right below New York. So construction's still happening. We just saw what's taking place from a U.S. perspective, and then now in the top 26, these are the leaders with the largest percent change here. And then as we look at the top 26 again, with Phoenix being in that group compared to the rest of the U.S., we see here, the final planning 94,000 rooms compared to the rest of the U.S. at 166. So again, just interesting to see how those two differ, or in some cases are similar, with final planning sort of leading the way. And we talk about attrition rates, and I put this here because we talk about how much projects are sort of in construction. We talked about the number of projects that were in planning that went to deferred and went to abandoned, and the same with final planning. Well, we see as you sort of move up in construction phase that 96% of those properties in the past that have been in the construction phase, only 4% ended up not happening. So it's safe to say that if it's in construction, based on previous data, that those projects will actually come to fruition, which leads me to sort of Phoenix market pipeline. Again, this is the entire market, and we see 30 projects that are in construction. So almost, a little over 3,900 rooms. And we talk about final planning, all those together are equaling 104 projects sort of in the pipeline, equating to almost 13,000 new rooms. And now we will move into the forecast. And again, this is the US first, so the same pattern. This is obviously a lot of data here as far as percent changes, but you see sort of on the far left, the 2009 actual, and then how it moves. And we can see a huge drastic, we all know, but to see the percent changes from a 2020 forecast standpoint, where, unfortunately we do see the room supply grow, but we see everything else have negative growth. And then as we move to 2021, we don't make up all the ground. We obviously, you might have seen, or you've heard, or you will hear, based on our forecasts along with tourism economics. So a lot of work goes into these forecasts that we're thinking, 22, 23, it's going to take a little bit longer than we had originally expected. So this forecast has been revised, and we see that for 2020, RevPAR down a little over 52%, but in 2021, we see up, close to 40%. And so as we move into the absolute numbers again, we see 2020 forecast, under 40% occupancy. We see ADR, $103, $104, RevPAR, just right above $40. And then as we move to the far right, you can see a 34% decline, a swing here from 2019 actual to the 2021 forecast on RevPAR. Positive news here is that we do see growth. We do see some positive, some light at the end of the tunnel. We know that everyone is working extremely hard, and we hope to continue to provide that impromptu data that's so very needed at this time. And so as we segue into the Phoenix market forecast, I've provided the 2020 and the 2021 forecasts, as well as the percent changes. And we can see a lot similar, very similar to the US, except one section, which is ADR, where we do see a continued drop in ADR from this year and into next year. But because the occupancy is forecasted so much better, we do see a positive growth in RevPAR. And then we compare that to, just as we look at different ways to view data, how does the Phoenix forecast as the market compared to the US? And we can see here, from a 2020 forecast remaining of the year, occupancy at 48, where we see the 2020 US at just under 40, and so on and so forth. But you can see, just interesting to see how they sort of look next to each other as you have time to review this after the presentation. And as we move to 2021, again, positive growth with the exception of the ADR in Phoenix. But again, positive growth on occupancy, positive growth in RevPAR. And this is, again, I will say a lot goes into these forecasts, a lot of local government, a lot of working with the source data that's coming in, a lot of time spent with local ordinances of understanding what's taking place, rooms that are sold, rooms that are open, rooms that are temporarily closed. So we do appreciate the continued support from the source data, and we hope to continue to be a valued resource to everyone in the industry. I want to end with a new product launch, Forward Star. This is very much happening in outside of North America, but we're bringing it to North America. I will, again, this is included, but this is just like the historical star where it's source data. And so you understand from a historical standpoint how you're performing against your comp set. Now you will have the opportunity to look at how you perform from a forward-looking standpoint versus your comp set in submarket with your occupancy on the books as well as your pickup as you go. And this is from a daily, weekly, monthly, 365 view out. So bringing this, it's already active as we're trying to bring this to North America, but certainly wanted to take an opportunity to show because Forward Star and the historical star play very well off one another. Just some odd and ends here. CoStar Group acquired STR in October of last year. So we are certainly in the full-on process of integration, a lot of really great and new products like Forward Star and new offerings coming soon. So thank you again, everyone, for allowing me a chance to speak. I really do hope for the chance to be in front of everyone in person very, very soon. So thank you again.
Chase, thank you so much. Really appreciate that presentation. And I can only imagine the time, energy, and effort going into compiling that data, especially in today's times that we're facing, where, as you mentioned, things are closing, some temporarily, unfortunately, some permanently. Really a tricky time to navigate and provide data that is useful to our businesses. So thank you for all that you do and the team at STR. It's invaluable information, and we appreciate you bringing that to us, not only from a U.S. perspective, but from a state perspective, and then drilling down into Phoenix. And if I could, we have just a couple of minutes. I did want to ask you about this last item that you touched on, which is the Forward Star. As you mentioned, a new product that I think will be very helpful to our businesses moving forward, thus the name Forward Star. You touched on that a little bit, but is there some more that you can share with us?
Yeah, sure. It is, again, I go back to, you understand how you're operating from a historical standpoint. So when you talk about your marketing spend, you talk about your game plan as to how to increase occupancy, ADR, RevPAR, all those metrics and all those things that the hotel managers, revenue managers are doing. What Forward Star does is it's source data. So it's collecting it, again, from the property management systems, and it's allowing you to benchmark the forward-looking data. So you have your historical view and you have your forward view. So you're saying, I've been looking at how I'm doing looking forward on my own. Now I want to benchmark it against my comp set and against my submarket to see just how impactful those changes that we're making are having on our property versus our comp set. So we're really excited about it. We've had a lot of positivities, a lot of positive feedback rather, as we've launched in specific markets throughout the US, but we are certainly moving full steam ahead.
Well, that is fantastic. Thank you for sharing that with us. And as Chase mentioned, this presentation will be available. And also, Chase has been gracious enough to offer up the opportunity, if there are any follow-up questions, to go ahead and get in touch with the team at AZLTA, and we can connect you with Chase and the team at STR. But want to thank you again. We've just got 1 minute, and I want to use that minute to invite you all to jump in your cars with us and head north. We've got another industry forecast. Chase, again, is today completing the trifecta. We started the day in Southern Arizona. We're now in Phoenix metro area, and we're going to be heading up to Northern Arizona to drill down on that data. But before hitting the road, I do want to say thank you again to today's sponsors. Without you, this presentation would not be possible. So thank you again so much to Experience Scottsdale, STR, US Travel, Young's Market Company, The Sanctuary, and West Rock Hospitality. Thank you for your generosity and for partnering with us in these extraordinary times. Chase, we'll see you up north.
Thank you again.
Thanks.